A very good afternoon. Welcome to the Briefing PM, an hour of the latest political news, debate and analysis here on GB News. I'm Darren McCaffrey, and here's what's coming up over the next hour between 3 and 4. So Keir Starmer's 2 years. The Labour leader has been in Her Majesty's opposition, leading it from the green benches. 2 years from today, we're asked, is he the heir to Blair or a load of hot air? Also coming up, as evidence and accusation mounts of systematic war crimes by Russian troops in Ukraine. We'll hear from a military commander who served in Bosnia about the situation on the ground and what the international community should do next. And as the far right wins again in Hungary, they look set to be trounced in France, once again at the hands of Emmanuel Macron. We'll be looking ahead to the French elections that are due to be held this Sunday. And as always, get in touch with your views. You can email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet me at gbnews. A lot to come between now and 4 o'clock. But first, at the top of the hour, is the news with Rosie White.
Good afternoon, it's 1 minute past 3. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson says the discovery of more mass graves outside of the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv is sickening. The Ukrainian president says his country will not rest until it's identified those responsible for the atrocities. It follows satellite images of a mass grave in the grounds of a church in Bucha. The Kremlin has categorically denied any accusations related to the murder of civilians. The Ukrainian Member of Parliament, Alexei Goncharo, told us he's personally seen evidence of horrendous crimes.
What we saw in liberated areas of Kyiv region is absolutely awful. I've been there personally 2 days, and I saw a number of bodies of killed people. It's a real horror, and it's a real genocide which is committed by Russians and war crimes and by Russian army, because it's not Putin himself who was killing all these people. It was Russian soldiers and officers who did these awful things. And I think that we should call it genocide.
Sir Keir Starmer has said the UK needs a proper energy strategy from the government rather than going from one dictator to another. It's after the International Trade Secretary, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, said the UK must build its green economy to eliminate Russian fuel from our energy mix once and for all. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has caused turmoil in global energy markets. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said we need a strategy that is fast-forwarding on renewables and on nuclear.
We don't need energy rationing. We do need an energy strategy. And going from one dictator in Russia for your oil and gas, cap in hand to another dictator in Saudi Arabia, is not an energy strategy. So we need a strategy that is fast-forwarding on renewables and on nuclear.
There has been significant travel disruption on the first day of the school Easter holidays. Flights have been cancelled, cross-channel services have been hit as well by delays. Eurotunnel is warning its rail services to Calais are delayed. British Airways cancelled at least 115 flights today. EasyJet preemptively cancelled 62 flights scheduled for today, blaming sickness with COVID for staff shortages. While shortness of breath, having an aching body and also loss of appetite are 3 of 9 symptoms that have newly been added to the official list of COVID-19 signs of illness. The changes added to the NHS website emerged just days after free universal testing for COVID ended in England. Infection levels, though, have hit a record high in the UK. Almost 5 million people are estimated to currently have the infection. 57 people in the UK have become infected with salmonella in an outbreak linked to Kinder Surprise eggs. 70% of the cases involve children aged under 5. The Food Standards Agency said the chocolate firm Ferrero is recalling some batches of the eggs as a precaution while investigations continue. More cases have been recorded in Europe, in Ireland, France, Germany, Sweden and the Netherlands. The eggs are made in Belgium. The Labour Party says the average cost of a full-time nursery place is now just over £273 a week. The Shadow Education Secretary says parents are being forced to work fewer hours or leave jobs because they cannot find or afford childcare. A government spokesperson, though, says more than £3.5 billion has been invested in free childcare in each of the last 3 years. The EastEnders star June Brown, best known for her role as Dot Cotton, has died at the age of 95. A statement from her family confirmed she passed away peacefully at her home in Surrey on Sunday evening. An EastEnders spokesperson says she was loved and adored and will never be forgotten. EastEnders executive producer Chris Crenshaw said her portrayal of Dot Cotton made a huge impact on British television, which not only entertained the nation, but at times changed it a little for the better. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head to Darren for this afternoon's briefing.
Yeah, very good afternoon. Welcome to the programme on this Monday. Do get in touch. You know how to do that. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We're on TV, online and on your radio. Thank you very much indeed for your company. First up on the programme today, the terrible events in Ukraine have distracted Westminster from its scandals and navel-gazing. Well, today, it was slightly back on the agenda again, a reminder in many ways that it never really went away. We had the first of police fines last week over Partygate. They were handed out, including to senior civil servants. One official was the former person in charge of standards and ethics. Well, she was at the time, subsequently stepped down and now works in the private sector. It comes as Jacob Rees-Mogg has suggested that the world has moved on, and so should everyone else when it comes to Partygate. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's with us here in the studio. Good afternoon to you, Tom. Has the world moved on?
So to some extent, yes, and to some extent, no. It's a complicated answer because, of course, we are still in the middle of something. This is not a scandal that has concluded, and it's very hard to see the wood for the trees while we're in the middle of everything going on. The police investigation has not yet concluded. The first tranche of fines have been handed out, those 20 fixed penalty notices that have gone to a number of individuals. We don't know what number. Obviously, one individual may have received more than one fixed penalty notice, but we know that 20 have gone out. And the thing about these notices is that only the individuals that are handed them know that they've got them. The government doesn't know, and the Sue Gray doesn't know. So really only those who come forward and say that they've had their fixed penalty notice, that's who we know have had them. Now, one of those people, as you alluded to, was Helen McNamara, who was, of course, a very senior civil servant. Now, the event that she was at and was found to have been criminally culpable for was one in Whitehall, a leaving do for another civil servant. So to some extent, that event, the Prime Minister is insulated from. It wasn't in Downing Street, and it didn't involve political appointees or indeed politicians.
And we think some of these fines might have related to also the night before the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral,
Absolutely,
which the Prime Minister also wasn't at as well.
Exactly. That's the other one that we know, or at least has been reported, that fines were issued for. And of course, the Prime Minister on that Friday night was at Chequers, not in Downing Street. So from what we have seen right now, the Prime Minister is relatively insulated from the fallout of this. It doesn't feel like the temperature has risen to the heights of of anywhere near where it was a few months ago in terms of political fallout. However, the catch is the police investigation has not yet concluded. There may be more fines handed out, and indeed maybe ones that involve the Prime Minister or his family.
And Jacob Rees-Mogg's kind of retort today to these questions was that the Prime Minister didn't mislead anyone because he was told that these parties didn't happen, even though we now know they did because there's been fines for staff inside Downing Street. That line doesn't really probably work, though, if it turns out that he's been fined, or indeed potentially his wife.
Well, potentially, although there's always the argument that if it's taken the police several months to work out if something broke the law or not, perhaps it wasn't that obvious to those who participated in that event. There's very fine lines and a lot of grey area between what was a business meeting, what was singing happy birthday at a business meeting, was it a party because there was allegedly a cake, even though that particular event was reported by the Times at the time, back in 2020.
And no one
there
noticed.
Were lots of, and no one noticed. It was remarkable. But no, so there's lots of grey area. And of course, there'll be more to be done here. But importantly, once the police wrap up their investigation, if the Prime Minister is fined, Number 10 will tell us, and at the point at which the police wrap up their investigation, Sue Gray can finally conclude and publish her report. The report that was originally so redacted because of this police process. Her full report will be made public, an update to it, and then the Prime Minister returns to the Commons to address everything now that it's all in the open. That's still some time to come.
And reflecting this, but moving away slightly as well, is we've got a new poll out amongst, I think it is it the general public or Conservative members about the popularity of different cabinet members, and Boris is back again, kind of midfield.
This is the Conservative home poll of Conservative
Priti
supporters.
Patel not doing so well, though.
Priti Patel, the only cabinet minister in negative figures, but also a remarkable drop from someone else in the cabinet, Rishi Sunak. The Chancellor is down to third from the bottom. Really, the response to that spring statement has not gone down well, even with the Conservative grassroots, which is what this survey was assessing. Now, it's fair to say this is an online survey. There's a lot of caveats to it. It's not registered with the British Polling Council in the same way that a YouGov or a Survation or a Comres or anything like that.
Temperature check.
It is a temperature check, but remarkably it's been accurate in the past. We've been able to see how it's done compared to electoral events like leadership contests. And really it's been pretty on the money in the past. The kind of people that read this particular website are the Conservative grassroots. So it's a good temperature check. Boris stock up, Rishi stock down.
And just very finally, Parliament is in recess. Lots of politicians back in the constituency, but we are expecting a big announcement this week on the UK's energy strategy, which has been much promised for weeks. It looks like in many ways everything is going to be on the table, but maybe a particular focus on offshore wind and nuclear.
Yes, the safe bets in this strategy are a big expansion in nuclear power and indeed more offshore wind. Also, ensuring the future of North Sea oil and gas, offshore oil and gas, to smooth that transition, and the profits may be being used for carbon capture solutions. The contentious areas, the areas where we don't yet know exactly what's happening, is onshore wind, potentially more onshore wind with a bit of a subsidy for people who live near it to their energy bills, which could be a popular incentive to ease out those who believe not in my backyard. But then also there's the question of shale gas, of fracking within this country. Now that seems to have been delayed until it's likely not to be fully in this strategy. It's likely to be, wait for it, after the local elections when the assessment is all done.
But just very, very finally on all of this, the problem is that, first of all, on nuclear power, I mean, we're not going to see anything, even if it was started tomorrow, until probably the early 2030s. And also, I saw the Prime Minister was asked about this on Thursday, or at least in a private meeting, that you can jack up one of these wind turbines apparently within 24 hours, but sometimes it can take 10 years to get permission to do so. I.e., you know, you could try and turbocharge these things, but it's still going to be a while down the line.
None of these solutions for the energy security strategy are going to make things better in the immediate term. Really, what the government can do for the next 6 months is hope, one, for better weather, and two, for potentially a political solution. Or windier weather, potentially. Or number two, a political solution when it comes to oil and gas overseas. Maybe a deal with Qatar, a deal with Saudi Arabia, OPEC pumping more, or indeed a political settlement in Ukraine. Really, that's the only thing that can move the needle in terms of the energy price cap, which is next to be assessed in the autumn.
In saying that, I mean, Brent crude is down slightly, given Joe Biden's assessment last week. He's going to, I think, release oil reserves in the United States, which has at least helped a little bit on terms of oil costs. Tom, as always, thank you very much indeed, Tom Harwood there. Political correspondent. Thank you, Tom. OK, let's move on to Labour, because it is 2 years ago today since Sir Keir Starmer was elected Labour leader, paying tribute to Jeremy Corbyn, who described as a friend as well as a colleague. Months later, though, he came up with the slogan, "The Labour Party is under new management," and suspended its former leader after he alleged that anti-Semitism in the Labour Party was dramatically overstated for political reasons by opponents inside and outside. Ever since, though, he's tried to reshape his shadow cabinet, and Labour now tend to be polling above the Conservative Party. So, what will the next 2 years look like for Labour ahead of the general election expected in May 2024? Well, join me now to discuss all of this is a former Labour MP for Bury North, that's James Frith, who lost a seat at the last election, but potentially hoping to win it back at some stage in the future. James, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just first of all, we were talking there, weren't we, about how Labour are ahead in the polls when it comes to recent months. But in saying that, that seems to be more as a misfortune to the Conservative Party than it does that voters are flocking to Labour.
Hi, Darren. It's good to be with you and making my debut on GB News. I think you're right that the progress in the case.
Bury North is a while away, but we think we might have him back. Sorry, James, you were in mid-flow there. talking about Keir Starmer. And I was putting it to you about the fact that it seems that the Conservatives are dropping in the polls rather than necessarily Labour climbing as voters flock to them.
I think it's fair to say that there's been steady progress by Keir Starmer under Keir Starmer's leadership, but there's much more to do. Whilst governments do lose elections, it isn't enough in opposition to hope that you simply inherit the misfortune of the government of the day. And so Keir's got a job to do to emotionally connect with people in Bury and Britain in order to win at the next election. And that's about having a credible vision. It's about speaking to people's ambitions, their values, and how they see the world, how they find it, and what connection the Labour Party can make to those values and those visions of ordinary working people across Bury and the wider country.
But what is Labour's vision 2 years into his leadership? I mean, I would struggle really to simply define. If someone came up to me in the street and said, "What does Labour stand for? Want to see a change in the country?" I mean, I would struggle at least in a couple of sentences to state what that is. What is,
Sure.
in a couple of sentences, what is Labour's vision for the future under Keir Starmer?
Look, I think the Labour Party wants a country that is the best place to grow up in and the best place to grow old in. That's really a return to the principles of looking after one another, of helping everybody fulfil their potential, and removing those obstacles that very often stand in the way, whether or not you're born into wealth or whether, in fact, you're born into deep entrenched poverty. And in the last 12 years, Bury and Britain has got harder for more people than it has helped. And so I think we've got a challenge to spell that vision out, to take the mission of the Labour Party. And frankly, I would say we started from a pretty low base after a whopping defeat in 2019. But to be now contesting once again, I think is a mark of the progress being made. But there's much more to do. We can't be complacent about it.
Definitely can't be complacent. That's certainly true. In terms of where Labour are at, I mean, it's going to be an uphill struggle to win the next election, given the size of the Conservatives' majority. I think it would take a greater swing than we saw in 1997. I mean, that simply is incredible, is it, really? Particularly if the SNP do well in Scotland. I mean, Labour's chances of winning the next election are pretty slim, irrespective almost of how well Keir Starmer does.
No, I think we've got skin in the game. I think we are being looked at as a credible alternative government, but we've got to spell that out in the next 2 years. That begins actually in the local elections, and a good performance at the local elections is an important platform to that. But you're right, it's a huge task. But the fact that we are in contest for the next election is a mark of the progress that has been made to date. And I would say 2 years ago, to be as far behind in the polls as we were, nearly 19, 20 points behind in some cases, to now be 4 or 5 points ahead, routinely ahead, for net gains, for the comparison between Johnson and Starmer, for Starmer to be ahead. And also for the government itself to be in such a terrible state after a hugely impressive performance at the election, to then find itself on the ropes as it is a statement of intent by the Labour Party to go on from here and to do better still.
And just very finally, before we let you go, one of the key tenets that Labour in some ways could battle the government on is on the issue of Europe, not least of all because the OBR have said that it is and has led to a massive drop in trade, at least in the short term, and to economic growth. It is a drag on economic growth. GDP expected to be down 4%. That's double what the pandemic has caused in terms of economic growth. And yet Labour seem to be kind of irrelevant when it comes to the debate on our relationship with Europe. The Lib Dems making a case of rejoining the single market. Is that Labour's Achilles heel?
No, I don't think so. I think Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves have both said it's about making Brexit work. It isn't enough. It's typical Johnson to have announced he's got it done and then to walk away. He is a man who walks away from everything he's been responsible for in his life. And he's walked away from Brexit. He's not interested in the detail on these issues. It's for the Labour Party, I think, to make a credible case to reconnect with the opportunities that Brexit brings to reformat or forge that relationship with Europe as an independent country, and for the next 10, 15, 20 years, to actually maximise the opportunities now in front of us in this new period for our relationship with Europe. I don't think the Labour Party are out of the conversation at all. I think if you look at the polling, particularly relating to trusted on the economy, trusted on migration, trusted on healthcare, these are issues, of course, that speak to our new relationship with Europe as well. And those opportunities to grow our economy so that we have a better tax take in order to pay for the public services the Labour Party continues to trade higher on than the Conservatives. I think it's there for the taking, but I would say we've got to do better. And our slogan for this local election is "On Your Side." And for me, it's about communicating that it isn't just a policy, it isn't just money off the bills. It's does the Labour Party understand my life, and are they on my side? And we're saying we are on your side, and it's for the electorate to look at us again.
Indeed, and we'll see how those local elections play out. James, thank you very much indeed. James Firth there joining us from Bury this afternoon. OK, it is 21 minutes past 3 o'clock. You're watching the briefing here on GB News. Do get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. But coming up after the break, Boris Johnson calls the latest serious allegations of war crimes by Russian troops indiscriminate and unforgivable slaughter. We'll speak to a military expert and people on the ground in Ukraine to get the very latest there. But before all of that, let's bring you up to date with the weather on this Monday afternoon.
Hello again, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. It may be a mild Monday, but the colder air isn't too far away, and it will be returning, certainly across northern Scotland tomorrow, cold enough for some heavy snowfall. At the moment, we're kind of between two weather fronts, and tucked in here, some really quite mild air. But notice that cold front is drifting south, so the cold air is returning across northern Scotland. Some snow showers across Shetland, and by the end of the night, some snow over parts of the Highlands. But mostly rain at low levels here, and a wet night for Northern Ireland. Rain at times for western parts of England and Wales, whereas much of eastern England, southern England, having a dry night with a lot of cloud and that mild air, meaning temperatures holding up at 8, 9, 10 Celsius. But there will be a frost in northern Scotland with that cold air still in place here. Hitting that wet weather means snow. Initially just over hills on Tuesday, but coming down to lower levels across northern parts of the mainland. So we are a bit concerned that could cause some disruption, particularly by the end of Tuesday night and into Wednesday. Rain for central and southern Scotland, maybe a little bit for northern England and later Northern Ireland. But for the bulk of England and Wales, it's a fine day on Tuesday. Sunny spells and high temperatures. Look at that, 15, maybe 16 Celsius. Hull up to 15. Manchester 13 or 14 probably. That wet weather will work across Northern Ireland into Northern England during Tuesday evening. The cold air in place still across Northern Scotland. We do have a yellow Met Office warning in place. That snow could cause some issues by the time we get to Wednesday. Rain swinging across the south, and a very different day on Wednesday for England and Wales. Yes, some sunny spells, but a whole host of rain showers. That snow only slowly easing across northern Scotland. Rain showers elsewhere, and it's starting to turn colder as well. Temperatures will be maybe 8 or 9 at best early on for Glasgow and Belfast, feeling colder by the afternoon. 10 or 11 further south, but add on the wind, it will feel a lot colder.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
Make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
Very welcome back to the briefing on this Monday afternoon. Just bring you up to date with the story we're covering a little bit earlier, Partygate and the fines that were handed out last week by the Metropolitan Police to civil servants inside Downing Street. One of those civil servants was Helen McNamara. She, of course, was the government's former ethics chief. She was essentially Sue Gray's successor, actually, inside government. She received a fixed penalty notice fine, and she has said in a statement this afternoon that she is sorry for the error of judgment I have shown over that party. So apologising essentially for what she brands an error of judgment in going to that party. She is one of numerous civil servants who received fines last week, with the expectation that many more will receive them in the weeks to come. Let's move on, though, to Ukraine now, because images of civilian bodies in the streets of Bucha near Kyiv and a 40-foot long mass grave so large that it's visible in satellite images have led, unsurprisingly, to an outpouring of international condemnation of Russia. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has this afternoon called the discovery sickening and indiscriminate and unforgivable slaughter. This is what he had to say in a tweet. He added that those responsible will be held to account. The discovery of these atrocities comes after Russian forces began to withdraw back towards Belarus and Russia, allowing journalists to enter the areas after Ukrainian forces managed to get back control, if you like, of that area. President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited Bucha, where he said that the Russians have carried out war crimes and genocide. Elsewhere in Ukraine, the Ministry of Defence has said that Russian forces are continuing to consolidate and reorganise, with a focus now on the Donbass region that is in eastern Ukraine. Well, let's bring in Maria Adadiva, who joins us now. She is a European expert, or she's at the European Expert Association. That's a Ukrainian think tank. She's in Kharkiv, in the east of the country, that's seen, of course, fierce fighting really since the start of this war more than a month ago. Maria, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just first of all, on these war crimes that seem to have taken place on the outskirts of Kyiv, what's been the reaction from inside Ukraine?
Well, the same as all over the world. People are feel sick of seeing these pictures, and they are shocked they are paralyzed of what is happening. We all knew here in Ukraine that Russia is an evil empire, and Russia already has done many bad things to Ukraine, starting with Holodomor, then a mass deportation of people from Ukraine, killings and everything. But it was in the history, and when we see it now with our own eyes happening this day, this is something that normal people cannot believe and grasp. The
That's
feeling
very
of
true.
shock.
What is the situation where you are in Kharkiv? Because obviously it has been shelled for weeks now, but it remains in Ukrainian hands.
Yes, it does, but then the situation is difficult. So what is happening now is that Russia has control over the territories to the north and northeast of Kharkiv, and they have control over smaller towns there. And the major fights are now going on in Izum. This is the eastern town outside of Kharkiv, and the nearby areas are also occupied by Russian troops. And we already know that when Russia takes control over any such town, they immediately cut off any communication so that no information will be coming out of there. And they kidnap people, they kill civil activists, they torture people, they rape women, and they forcefully move people out of that areas to the territory of Russia, to the camps. And I know such people who were forcefully moved, and now their position is unknown. The only thing we know that they are in these camps. So the situation there is very critical, and it might still be the same, because what might happen is that these troops that Russia has withdrawn from the north of Ukraine, being unable to realize the full-scale invasion, they will now regroup, take additional resources, and put more harder, more aggressively on the east and on the south of Ukraine. And Kharkiv is an eastern city, so the next months might be very difficult for the city.
And just very finally, Maria, there's also concern, isn't there, too, though, about Odessa in the south, in that it is increasingly seen strikes from warships that are in the Black Sea.
That's the tactics now Russia uses. They are unable to do anything on the ground operations because their military is not ready for that, and they do not have any morale, and they tried not to get into direct fights. That's why they either terrorize civilians by bombarding, by shelling, by killing innocent people, or they use airstrikes and rocket and ballistic missiles from the sea or from the territory of Russia to the Ukrainian cities. And that's why Ukraine asks for more defensive weapons, for medium and large range rocket anti-rocket system to defend the sky, because this is the sky that Russia uses to aggressively attack Ukraine. And when we will be able to defend the sky, that will mean that Ukrainian positions will be more firm, and we will be winning this war more quickly.
Okay, Maria Adiva, thank you so much indeed for joining us there from Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine, from the European Expert Association, which is a Ukrainian think tank. Okay, you're watching GB News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to be looking ahead to the French presidential elections, the first round of which is on this Sunday. Can Emmanuel Macron hold on to power? But before all of that, just after 3:30, here's the news.
It's 3:33. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date. Boris Johnson says the discovery of more mass graves outside the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv is sickening. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his country will not rest until it's identified those responsible for the atrocities. There's significant travel disruption on the first day of the school Easter holidays. Eurotunnel is warning its rail services to Calais are delayed by around 4 hours. British Airways cancelled at least 115 flights for today. EasyJet preemptively cancelled 62 flights scheduled for today. The airlines blamed sickness with COVID for staff shortages. Speaking of COVID, will shortness of breath, having an aching body and also loss of appetite, well, they're 3 of 9 symptoms that have newly been added to the official list of COVID-19 symptoms. Infection levels have hit a record high in the UK, with almost 5 million people currently estimated to have the infection. 57 people in the UK have become infected with salmonella in an outbreak linked to Kinder Surprise eggs. Around 77% of the cases involve children who are 5 and under. The Food Standards Agency said the chocolate firm Ferrero is recalling some batches of the eggs as a precaution while investigations continue. EastEnders star June Brown, best known for her role as Dot Cotton, has died at the age of 95. A statement from her family confirmed she passed away peacefully at her home in Surrey on Sunday evening with her family by her side. An EastEnders spokesperson said she was loved and adored and will never be forgotten. You're up to date on GB News. We're on your TV, online and radio. Don't go anywhere. Darren will be back shortly with the briefing.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Very welcome back to GB News. It is 23 minutes to 4 o'clock. Just before the break, we were talking about, of course, the serious allegations of systematic war crimes in and around Kyiv by Russian troops as they withdrew over the last couple of days in Ukraine. President Biden, actually, in the last couple of minutes, adding to the international chorus of condemnation, describing what has happened there as a war crime. Well, let's discuss this and many other things with the former member of the Joint Intelligence Committee, that's Colonel Richard Kemp, who joins us down the line. Richard, thank you so much indeed, as always, for joining us here on GB News. Just first of all, I believe you served in Bosnia, among other places, somewhere where international war crimes did take place, but somewhere also where justice was handed down to many who carried them out. Just first of all, under your assessment of what you've seen, do you think war crimes have taken place?
Well, certainly if what we can see from the footage that we've watched in the media is as it appears, and Russian troops have indeed deliberately shot innocent civilians in the street, and in some cases bound them and shot them, then yeah, absolutely, it looks very much that way. I mean, obviously there are circumstances which civilians could have been fighting against the Russians. We know that civilians have armed themselves with different types of weapons to fight the Russians. And that would be a different issue if they were fighting against civilians who were fighting them. but it looks rather different to that. It looks like systematic, deliberate killing of innocent civilians, whether it's for recreational amusement for themselves or for reasons of terrifying the local population and terrifying and terrorizing the Ukrainian people. Whatever the motivation, it looks that way, yes, certainly.
Just in terms of the difficulty, given again your experience with Bosnia, how difficult is it to prove these things essentially in a court of law in the International Criminal Court, and then to bring about any prosecutions? Not least of all because, of course, I mean the difference with what happened in the former Yugoslavia was that Slobodan Milosevic lost power. Vladimir Putin, could remain in the Kremlin for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very difficult indeed. And obviously the desirable thing in every situation like this is the country whose soldiers carry out war crimes deal with those soldiers. When for example, Western countries, Britain, America, whatever, soldiers are accused of war crimes, then they're investigated and, if necessary, tried by those countries. That could only happen in Russia if Vladimir Putin is brought down. And a different government, a government that wants to ensure that law and order is maintained, then investigates and tries and, if necessary, punishes the people responsible. If that doesn't happen, it has to be done by an international tribunal. First of all, getting people from Russia who have carried out these crimes, whether it's politicians who have ordered them or whether it's soldiers on the ground who have done them, is obviously extremely difficult if the country's not prepared to cooperate with that, which under Putin, Russia wouldn't be. And the other issues, of course, relate to collecting evidence, to actually pinning a crime to an individual. Obviously, there are some crimes you could say, ordering a war of aggression by Vladimir Putin is a war crime in itself, and that's something that's much more clear-cut. But actually pinning down the killing of some poor old man riding on his bike, being shot in the back of the head by a Russian soldier, to an individual and prosecuting that individual is rather different. So yeah, in a war zone, collecting evidence is very, very hard.
Let's move on, if we can, Richard, just to the wider conflict. Is it your now impression that Vladimir Putin has moved essentially to Plan B, given there's much speculation about whether his troops were going to kind of remove themselves from around Kiev? It does seem now to have happened. Is it the expectation that the primary goal now is, as they've stated themselves, essentially in the Donbass region?
It looks that way, certainly, from what I can see. And the Russians, whether the Russians were ever intending to attack Kiev directly and fight street by street through the city, we don't know that. It may have been that they were there, they deployed troops in order to tie Ukrainian troops down into Kiev while they were operating in the south and the east, much more effective than they were around Kiev. Or it may be that they hoped also by tying those troops down and threatening Kiev, it would bring down the government, against the threat of street fighting in Kiev, that they would instead they'd surrender. That didn't happen, and it appears now anyway that they're refocusing efforts completely on the south and the east. They're withdrawing troops from the area of Kiev and other parts of Ukraine, and also they're bringing in fresh troops from Russia as well as the ones that they're pulling out, who will no doubt have taken a bit of a mauling, will need to be reconstituted before they're recommitted to battle. So I think that's their objective, and the objective in the south is to establish a land corridor, as they've pretty much done already, between Crimea and Russia and the Donbass, and to consolidate the Russian positions in the Donbass. And I think once that's done, it may be that Putin decides I can announce this as being a victory. These are my primary war objectives. I will announce a victory, and then not carry out any further attacks elsewhere in Ukraine.
Yeah, there's much speculation in the papers today that he may be trying to aim for Victory Day, which I think is the 7th of May in Russia, when they normally have a big troop celebration commemorating the defeat of the Nazis. Just very finally, Richards, though other things may count against the Russians, even in the Donbass region. First of all, you've got a very well-trained kind of Ukrainian troops there who've been there for a very long time, deeply entrenched. They've been fighting for 8 years in that region. And additionally, I was listening to another expert today saying he was looking at the weather forecast where temperatures are due to reach 20 degrees on Friday, meaning that much of that hard ground will turn to mud.
Yeah, that makes obviously troop manoeuvre very difficult, particularly with wheeled vehicles. Tanks as well have problems in really difficult mud. But that adds to the problems. And I think that was one of the reasons why Putin attacked in winter, was because he was hoping to get the whole thing done, perhaps before the ground started to unfreeze. It proved a mistake. And it might be very difficult for him. We shouldn't forget also that the Russians still do have very, very large armed forces at their disposal, both in Ukraine and back in Russia, that can be brought forward. And I think there's also been a degree of exaggeration of Russian losses in this war and of how well the Ukrainians have done. Now, I'm not in any way suggesting they haven't done extremely well, because they have. But I think we need to retain some kind of balance when we're looking at how the future might work. And I think, therefore, we should not expect Russia to lose against the Ukrainians in the east, and we should ensure that we keep supplying them with as much material of war, like maybe tanks, artillery, and air defense systems, missile launchers, and funding as we possibly can to ensure that they stand the best possible chance of defeating Putin.
OK. As always, really appreciate your analysis this afternoon. That's Colonel Richard Kemp there joining us from Abu Dhabi. Thank you so much indeed. Let's move on. I'm back here in the UK. A case has been heard at the Royal Court in Belfast trying to stop an amnesty for all Troubles-related cases in Northern Ireland. These historical cases, heard until now, have mainly seen state forces being brought back for examination with no convictions. Many say the prosecutions are one-sided, and now the British government are pushing for an end to all such court actions. Well, here to explain it all is our Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie, who joined us from Belfast this afternoon. Dougie, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Just explain us what is happening in that courthouse behind you.
Well, the court has broken up for the day now, but the barristers for the two people who were victims, I suppose their parents were victims, have argued that the government has no right, politicians have no right to bypass the courts, and that an amnesty cannot happen. Now, this amnesty that they're talking about is a command paper set by the Tory government. It may not even make law, but they're saying that that cannot happen. Now, I have spoke to a few unionist politicians in the last hour, and they are not all I suppose, cut up about this. They're quite pleased, actually, because if that's the case, then those letters of comfort and the Queen's pardons of mercy that Tony Blair gave to the IRA, let's not forget the IRA responsible for 60% of the killings in Northern Ireland, would have to come back. They'd be null and void. And therefore, the unionist people of Northern Ireland and those in the security forces may then well get answers, as these people have to appear in court. The real problem with that, I suppose, is that that was all part of the Good Friday Agreement, but it wasn't in the agreement itself. That's how confusing this really is. Then we have the Republic of Ireland's government, who are trying to be almost spectators in this and saying that the British government must stand by the law. But they too were involved in the troubles of Northern Ireland. And in 1991, a young man called Ian Sproul was gunned down by the IRA, and John Sproul, his brother, has been campaigning to try and meet the Taoiseach, because the one and only inquiry they had in the Republic was the Smithwick's Tribunal, and it brought out that there was collusion in that murder. Now, I spoke to the Taoiseach when he was attending an event last Friday to do with legacy in Derry, and this is what he had to say.
And I don't have a difficulty in meeting the Sproul family, and I want to say, I have to be very categorical about this. On the legacy issue, the Irish government stood up to the plate in terms of the Smithwick Tribunal, and we saw it through. We started the Smithwick Tribunal and we saw it through. There can be no hiding place, and the government of the Republic will not shelter or protect anybody in respect of any wrongdoing or any violence imposed on anybody. So I really would reject any assertion on that front.
He must have a long diary, because we're going on this years, emails, letters, and he still hasn't met me. If he's able to come here tonight to Northern Ireland, he's been able to come to Northern Ireland and meet me and other families. The collusion come to light, and the Smithwick Tribunal were witnessed 6 dates said with beyond doubt there was a collusion in my brother's murder, There have been other collusion in the Republic of Ireland, but one door after another being closed, and I'm going to keep this fight up till there must be truth and justice, and no comeback from the Republic of Ireland. What sickens me is they keep chatting about legacy. They're more unable and want to come to Northern Ireland to chat about legacy and blame everybody else. But when it's on their own door, they don't want to talk about it, don't want to meet me, and this must change. Legacy needs to be for everybody, just not the chosen few.
Well, there you are. That's how divisive legacy is in this part of the world. You have a victim standing outside an event set to celebrate peace and legacy. He's not invited in, and he can't get a word with the people that have the answers for him.
BT, thank you very much indeed for bringing us up to date with that outside the Royal Court of Justice there in Belfast. Thank you, Doogie. Now let's head to France, because polls this Sunday open for the first round of the presidential elections there, which once again are a battle fundamentally between the centre ground and the far right. That is, i.e. the current president, Emmanuel Macron, and essentially Marine Le Pen. It is expected that Emmanuel Macron is going to win, though he is facing challenges, of course, across the political spectrum. Let's bring in the Paris-based journalist Peter Allen, who joins us down the line. Peter, very good afternoon to you. Just first of all, we talk about the far right, don't we? There have been two kind of key people in that field this year, Eric Zemmour and Marine Le Pen. Marine Le Pen seems probably like the candidate who's going to end up in the second round.
Yes, she's certainly leading the polls at the moment, Darren. She's on about 20% for the first round, which is, by any reckoning, a very, very good first-round score, considering how many candidates are standing this time round. There's 12 of them. Yes, Emmanuel Macron is ahead of her, but Eric Zemmour, who at one stage looked like the new hope, as it were, of the far right, he's well behind. He's on 10% compared to Le Pen's 20%. So according to the polls, which are normally very accurate here in France, at the moment you would say that Marine Le Pen has got a very, very good chance of getting into the second round to take on Emmanuel Macron 2 weeks on Saturday, Darren.
But at the same time, how has the war played into all of this? Because, of course, there have been allegations of Russian financing for Marine Le Pen in the past. And at least in the immediate aftermath of the launch of the war, it did seem to boost Emmanuel Macron's ratings.
Yes, this is one of the strange things about the French Republic. We have Eric Zemmour, who's received two criminal convictions very, very recently in French court. He has a third as well. That hasn't really affected him massively, his vote. And as you say, at a time when the Russians are being accused of being war criminals and prosecuting a really filthy war in Ukraine and slaughtering men, women and children, we have French politicians who've been extremely close to the Putin regime, not least of all Marine Le Pen. She's received financing from a Russian bank and has been very warmly received in Moscow, more warmly, I have to say, than Emmanuel Macron. We all remember that huge table between Emmanuel Macron and Putin just before war broke out. Yes, the answer to your second question, Darren, Emmanuel Macron is still speaking to Putin. They would argue, the Macron camp that is, that he's not speaking to him in any kind of fraternal way, any kind of friendly way. He just wants to tell him to stop what he's doing. So it works both ways, really. On one side, yes, he is getting a lot of criticism from his opponents, Emmanuel Macron, for apparently being so close to Putin. But on the other, people are saying, well, this is the mark of a statesman. This is somebody who's prepared to meet the beast head on, if you want to put it that way. And he's doing that regularly. And so it depends who you speak to, really, Dan.
OK, and just as you were talking there, we were actually watching pictures of Eric Zemmour in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And it's quite extraordinary sometimes when you cover British politics and you look at French politics, it's different because it's a presidential election. But, you know, tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people actually turn out for political rallies, which does not happen here in the UK, it must be said. Peter, just before we go, and very quickly if you can, we've only got about a minute left. What is Emmanuel Macron's then offering in a second term? What do you think he's trying to convince the French public that he's still got left to give?
Well, first of all, he's still very young. He's not even 45, he's 44. He is somebody who, if he does win 2 weeks on Sunday, he will be the first president for 20 years to win a second term. He thinks he's still got a lot of work to do. He points out that the economy is in pretty good shape. Unemployment is well below 10%. The figures are all looking very good. France is slowly coming out of the pandemic. It has an Olympics coming up, so it's going to be the centre of the sporting world, certainly then. And there have not been huge protests on the streets for a little while. That may change after the election, we'll see, but the yellow vests have been pretty quiet throughout the pandemic. So again, and we must remember France is leading the EU at the moment. This is very much an EU politician. And again, he has, he would say, youth and energy, and he thinks he can offer a great deal to France for another 5 years, and he won't even be 50 if he completes the second term. So compared to some of the other candidates, that's quite a lot to offer, he would argue, Darren.
OK, Peter, as always, appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll be speaking to you before and after those polls on Sunday. Peter Allen there joining us from Paris. OK, well, that is it from me for today. I'm back again, of course, at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Tom Harwood is here at 9:30 and 12 with the latest political news. Colin Brazier is up next. But first, here's the weather. See you tomorrow.
Hello again, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. It may be a mild Monday, but the colder air isn't too far away and it will be returning, certainly across northern Scotland tomorrow, cold enough for some heavy snowfall. At the moment, we're kind of between two weather fronts and tucked in here, some really quite mild air. But notice that cold front is drifting south, so the cold air is returning across northern Scotland. Some snow showers across Shetland, and by the end of the night, some snow over parts of the Highlands. But mostly rain at low levels here and a wet night for Northern Ireland. Rain at times for western parts of England and Wales, whereas much of eastern England, southern England, having a dry night with a lot of cloud and that mild air, meaning temperatures holding up at 8, 9, 10 Celsius. But there will be a frost in northern Scotland with that cold air still in place here. Hitting that wet weather means snow. Initially just over hills on Tuesday, but coming down to lower levels across northern parts of the mainland. So we are a bit concerned that could cause some disruption, particularly by the end of Tuesday night and into Wednesday. Rain for central and southern Scotland, maybe a little bit for northern England and later Northern Ireland. But for the bulk of England and Wales, it's a fine day on Tuesday. Sunny spells and high temperatures. Look at that, 15, maybe 16 Celsius. Hull up to 15. Manchester 13 or 14 probably. That wet weather will work across Northern Ireland into Northern England during Tuesday evening. The cold air in place still across Northern Scotland. We do have a yellow Met Office warning in place. That snow could cause some issues by the time we get to Wednesday. Rain swinging across the south and a very different day on Wednesday for England and Wales. Yes, some sunny spells, but a whole host of rain showers. That snow only slowly easing across Northern Scotland. Rain showers elsewhere, and it's starting to turn colder as well. Temperatures will be maybe 8 or 9 at best early on for Glasgow and Belfast, feeling colder by the afternoon. 10 or 11 further south, but add on the wind, it will feel a lot colder.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Yes, hello. I know I'm as shocked as you are. Welcome to Brazier. I'm Patrick Christie's. Colin is actually filming for the next James Bond audition today, I believe. So I am just simply filling in. I'm joined in the studio today, though, by Conservative commentator Joanne Nadler. And